I have added my name to those noble lords who oppose that Clause 57 stand part. And I'm very grateful to the noble Lord Coker, and others who've already spoken so eloquently to make the case about the concerns for this particular part of the bill. As the Church of England's lead bishop for modern slavery, I've had the privilege to sit with and listen to many charities, agencies and survivors of modern slavery, and so it seemed appropriate to bring those conversations from the grassroots to your lordship's attention. This is a clause that resonates deeply with the Church. Through the CLUA initiative, the Church of England is working across England with many partners to raise awareness of all aspects of modern slavery and help support victims and vulnerable groups. This includes running training courses on county lines, producing apps that allow for reporting of suspected modern slavery cases in car washes and in the farming sector, and working with many churches to raise up and equip volunteers in this area. Only yesterday, round the corner from here, the General Synod of the Church of England discussed a motion brought forward by members of the Diocese of Durham, supported by members of the Diocese of Southwark, on modern slavery and trafficking. This was prompted by the practical experience and difficulty in supporting a victim who had come to their attention. The Synod voted to acknowledge the leading role that Her Majesty's government has played internationally in challenging slavery, and also, voting unanimously, asked Her Majesty's government to introduce legislation particularly to ensure proper provision for the ongoing support and protection of trafficked minors, that should be enshrined in law. As a church, and like many faith groups, and I pay tribute, as others have, to the Salvation Army and the Madai Trust, we welcomed wholeheartedly the Modern Slavery Act of 2015. It has been such a crucial piece of legislation, and one we have long harboured hopes of seeing expanded and enhanced to do more to protect victims, prevent future cases, and work with businesses and civil society and collective effort against this appalling evil. It is accordingly so disheartening to see Clause 57 and others to which we will come in due course attached to this bill. I've heard from so many charities and so many faith-based initiatives, and from survivors themselves, a torrent of the same message. This is not going to work. It's going to exclude legitimate victims. It will result in fewer people being identified. It will result in fewer people being supported. The numbers who remain trapped and incapable of receiving the support they need outstrip by an enormous margin the relatively small numbers seeking to abuse the system. Clause 57 seeks to eliminate abuse. I humbly suggest that we have a system in place which is already able to identify and refuse support to those who are not truly eligible. Lord Coker has alluded to this. What 57 will do, in order to cut down on a relatively small level of abuse, is to add to the barriers that are put before victims. My Lord, I really do want to end emphasising that point. Those who work on the ground are desperate to do more work with government to identify victims and eliminate modern slavery. This is the time to be accelerating and to be increasing our engagement to break the business models that exploit and sustain and enslave human beings. It is not the time to be making it harder for victims to come forward. I really do hope we can rethink and we can remove this clause. My lords, I have added my name to those lords who have called that clause 62 not stand part of the bill, and I echo remarks that have been made by noble colleagues. I do think that, as my noble colleague Baroness Mackintosh has just said, this clause goes to an essential point of principle in the entire operation of how modern slavery protections have to work. The proposal is that Clause 62 make victimhood a conditional state. It sets up, in fact, a division between worthy and unworthy victims, as the noble lady has commented. And this would be such a retrograde step. If we're serious about destroying the business model of modern slavery and identifying and prosecuting as many slavers as we can, then we must find ways of incentivizing and supporting all victims to come forward. By excluding from support those who have acted in bad faith, a term I would greatly welcome more clarity from the noble and learned minister in terms of what that would mean, or those who are deemed a threat to public order, we're creating two categories of victims. Over the road in the General Synod of the Church of England debate yesterday, there was a plea not to be naive. As was said, traffickers and modern slavers are not stupid. They know how to use criminal exploitation to trap people into criminal activity, to scare them from approaching the police. We know this from work on the ground. From speaking to support charities and victims in my role as lead bishop on modern slavery, I have heard often that one of the most effective ways to keep victims in fear is to force them to commit crimes so they will be criminalised if they come forward to the authorities. My lords, life for legislators, indeed for everyone, would be much easier if there were nice, clear binaries, if there were blameless victims and evil enslavers. The reality, as anyone who has worked on the ground with those trafficked through county lines and many other forms of criminal exploitation can attest, is that things aren't that easy. People who have done bad things can and often do become victims of slavery. People who have become victims of slavery find themselves compelled to do bad things. In opposing Clause 62, I am not suggesting that people should not be held responsible for their actions. They should. But as a society, we have responsibilities too, and one of those is to break the way in which modern slavers operates. Creating a two-tier system of victimhood will, I fear, strengthen the way that modern slavery operates.